What's up, guys? Welcome to the very first episode of Conversations with Chris. This is a new series that we're rolling out, talking about sports card collecting, and particularly the NBA with people with a lot of different and interesting perspectives. And my very first guest today is Anthony, and you can find him on Instagram at Summertime Cards. And Anthony has a very, very interesting background, both in the hobby and as a professional involved with sports. So I want to start there so we can let the audience know a little bit about you, Anthony. You're a professional sports bettor, and you've been doing this for a while. How did you get into professional sports betting as a profession?
Okay, well, first off, thank you for having me on the show. I actually didn't know I was the first guest for this new series of yours, so it's definitely an honor to be on the show and most definitely an honor to be the first one for this series. But yeah, so with the sports betting, I kind of just did it for fun just in high school at first. And even though I was doing it for fun, I was still doing like a lot of research on it and like really trying to win. Like a lot of people just kind of do it for fun just because they want, the rush or whatever. But even from the very beginning, like I was always in it to like really try to win. And I was always reading all these articles online and just trying to figure out what worked and didn't work. And thankfully, early on, I had a lot of success. In fact, my the guy who was taking my wagers at the time, after like a year, he's like, "Hey, look, like I'm not exactly sure what's happening here, but everyone who's wagered with me has kind of like eventually lost whatever money it was they were going to wager with, and you just kind of consistently like beat me every week." So basically, told me like I won't take your wagers anymore. He said, you really should go on like online to these forums and maybe post your information, which I started doing, and I would just talk with people about like sports betting, and I started posting my picks every night, documenting whether I win or lost, something I did that a lot of other posters weren't doing. I would do these very long write-ups and explanations on why I thought a team was going to win that night, which a lot of people didn't do. And they also just didn't track their picks, or they track them for a week. I was very consistent with that, and my win rate the first year was very good. A lot of people thought, oh, this guy's just a flash in the pan. He's just lucky. He can't continue at the rate he was winning, which at the time was 60%, which in sports betting terms, like elite is like 58%. So 60% was very, very good. And I decided to do it for another year. I won 61% the next year, posting all these picks on the forum. At that time, my thread on the forum had 1.7 million views, which to date is still the most viewed sports betting thread ever over the course of a 7-month span. And I was spending tons of time doing it, so I decided to start a website where I would sell my information. I mainly did that because I couldn't just wager enough on the games to start, because you need a certain level of bankroll, and I didn't have that. So I sold the picks for a few years. I did very well. I maintained a high win rate. One summer, I started just doing the wagering on the picks myself. Did really, really well. Decided that the real upside in sports betting, as most people know that are in it, is just wagering for yourself rather than selling the picks and giving away the information for very little. Started doing that, and for the last 6 years, that's all I've done. I've just wagered on sports professionally for myself, not a bookie. I don't want anybody to think that's the case. I wager in Las Vegas. I wager in New Jersey. Other states now have also opened up. I go to wager there, and with online reputable bookmakers only. And yeah, that's pretty much the story in a nutshell.
Very cool. Very, very cool. And how did that, with a tremendous success track record in professional sports and wagering, how did that lead into you collecting, buying, and getting involved in sports cards?
So the sports cards, I was into that. Before sports betting, I was into sports cards. As a kid, 5 years old, 6 years old, I loved sports, and sports cards was my thing. So like every Christmas, my parents would ask me, what do you want? It was always, I want a box of cards or something. I think I was really into SPX early on. So I've been buying cards since I was little. Like in high school, I kind of fell out of it. In college, I also kind of fell out of it. Still didn't get back into it. A little bit after college, I have a friend named Gio Gonzalez. He's a 2-time All-Star pitcher in the major leagues. He made it to the MLBs, and I was friends with him, so I started to buy his cards. but still I just kind of focused on his cards. It was just more like me just creating a single PC of his. I wasn't really like looking at the hobby and all the different avenues and different things about it. Just bought his cards. So started doing the sports betting thing for like 10 years, was out of the cards, came back in. About August last year, I went to the National. And I have a partner who lives in Illinois, so I went to the National. And I said to myself, I really want to buy a Michael Jordan rookie. So I went, I got a Michael Jordan Fleer, PSA 86 Fleer. And I also ended up buying like some Luka rookie PSA 10s and a Mahomes rookie PSA 10 as well. And yeah, all those cards went up like crazy in value. And I couldn't believe like how much they went up. I mean, it's truly been absurd, this run that those particular cards have gone on over the course of the last 9 months. So when coronavirus hit, there's no sports betting anymore. There's nothing to wager on. So I just had seen how the card market was exploding, and something I've loved since I was a kid. And there's a lot of like risk to reward like factors involved that are very similar to sports betting. So I just gravitated towards it. Even during the year, during this NBA year, I've been buying up cards here and there. Like for a long time, I was just so into sports betting. It's all I would think about. Nothing would get in between me and that. But sports cards, the first thing I can honestly say in the last 8 years that it really grabbed my attention, and I really pay attention to it. I just like really enjoy it, buying them, collecting them. And yeah, it's just kind of came back, and I've just been really into it. And yeah, like applying a lot of a lot of things I know from betting on sports. Like, I watch maybe 5 to 6, 7 hours of basketball a day, every day for the last, 8 years. So I just have like an ungodly amount of knowledge, I feel, particularly about basketball. So it's been fun to kind of like incorporate that into, buying these cards, which are a physical asset, whereas the sports betting is just, you put in a wager and you win or lose, and that's it. So yeah, that's kind of how I got back into the sports cards.
That's very cool. You touched on this a little bit. Maybe you have a little bit more to say about it. What are some of the differences and similarities that you've observed over your life and most recently between sports card betting versus sports card collecting?
Well, like in sports betting, the number one thing is to find, basically we call it like sports betting market inefficiencies. So there's a lot of situations where certain teams are undervalued. The parallel would be that there's always certain cards that are undervalued, whether it be a certain set that's undervalued or a certain player that's undervalued. There's all these situations that come up where a player gets injured and all of a sudden his card just dropped to the ground. And then it's almost guaranteed that as soon as, a couple of months go by and his return is coming, that the excitement starts to grow and the card starts to go up in value. So you see it a lot with like those kind of scenarios where in sports it's very similar. Sometimes the opposite happens in sports, actually. An injury, in sports betting, an injury sometimes will cause a team that's very good to all of a sudden they over-adjust when the star's out, and then that team ends up winning the game easily. A lot of times it's also because the other team doesn't play quite as hard, doesn't come out with the same focus because the main player is not playing. I think we saw that a little bit with the Mavericks. They had some injuries, and the team actually performed very well without the injuries, which goes to show, they are a really well-coached team, and they just, they have a game plan and they execute it very well. And there's a lot of parallels in that way. There's just so many. The whole risk to reward, the grading, buying these ungraded cards and then grading them, and you just get such a huge premium that, in my mind, I kind of look at it when I put in a wager on something, let's say is like 4-1 to win. So i.e. I have to wager $100 to win $400. I see the grading kind of in the same way, where I only need to win 1 out of 3 in order to be profitable with the grading. So that's kind of the same thing I would do with my wagers. If I feel like a wager is 50-50, but I'm getting 4-1, that's a wager that I make for as much money as I can, as many times as I can. So with the sports cards, there's also that parallel with the grading that I see. Those are the couple that come to my head fastest.
Very interesting. So, all right, let's transition into talking NBA, talking athletes, talking collecting, talking cards. now that we have in hand a little bit of information about your background and the sort of analytical methods that you're bringing to the table. So, first question for you, it's a two-parter, but the two topics they dovetail together pretty nicely. So the questions are: first, who is the best buy for the forthcoming NBA playoffs? And relatedly, who do you think is going to win the title this year?
So the guy I think is going to be the best buy heading into the playoffs is Kawhi Leonard, specifically his Prism rookie, because it doubles as his rookie card as well as the first year of Prism, which I believe will go down as an iconic set. I know there's a lot of people that don't think that it will, but the truth of the matter is, even those people would admit that there will be a big group of people that will see it as an iconic set. A lot of the biggest collectors own a lot of cards and have paid a lot of money for that 2012 Prism, and they're not selling. And I just think that it will go down as one of the better sets. With the Kawhi Leonard PSA 10 from Prism, there's only 837 PSA 10s and 374 PSA 9s. So there's basically 1,100 PSA 10s and PSA 9s. You compare that to LeBron, his PSA 10 Chrome has basically 2,000 PSA 10s. And if you include the 9s, he's got another 2,000. That's almost 4,000 between those two. The price point is $1,000 for a PSA 10 of Kawhi compared to the LeBron, which goes for like around 7,500. I think with the price point of 1,000, the downside is much more protected. I don't think you're going to see sellers who are going to be like, frantically selling if Kawhi doesn't win this year because of the fact that it only costs him $1,000. Whereas maybe a LeBron that people spend $8,000, that's a lot of money to basically, I could see people maybe getting a little bit more nervous with that and wanting to cash in if they bought a couple of those at, $7,500, $8,000. And with that, I also think that the reason I like Kawhi so much is he already has 2 championships. If he wins this year, he now has 3 championships, 2 of which are going to probably have gone directly through LeBron winning that Finals MVP. And then also this championship now, probably if they win, they're going to have to go through the Lakers. He would now have 3 championships, tie LeBron on that, and it would be a back-to-back championship for him, changing teams. I don't know that there's ever been a superstar who's changed teams and then won again in the history of in the NBA. I don't know if you can think of any, Chris, but I feel like if there is, it's a very, very small group of people who have ever done that. There's definitely players who have done it. I know Steve Kerr's done it, and I know there's a couple of other guys, but not like a superstar who's like the leader of the team. I think Kawhi's a great buy. They have the same odds to win the championship as the Lakers. If they don't, they probably should, because I think they're very equal. I also think that the Clippers are most equipped to win the title with this whole coronavirus situation because of the fact that they play so much in isolation. Kawhi scores a lot in isolation. Paul George scores a lot in isolation. Lou Williams scores a lot in isolation. So the whole them needing to build a bunch of team chemistry in order to win the title it's just much less for them than it is a team like Milwaukee, who relies more on ball movement, and the Lakers, who definitely rely a ton on ball movement. Kawhi's game it reminds me a lot of Jordan. He's just completely fearless. He always wants the ball at the end of the game. He's just never scared. His passing has gotten a lot better. People don't talk about that. He averages 2.7 assists for his career. This year he's averaging 5. So it's a big jump. Still could get better, but still a huge jump in 1 year. And that was one of the main things that he spoke about. So I think Kawhi's a really good buy heading into the playoffs. I think they have a very good chance to win the title. And maybe a lot of people, they don't like him. He's a little quiet, things of that nature. But if he wins another title, just that resume, people won't be able to deny it. His prices will have to rise. And I think it could be a very, very, fast climb and high climb for his prices if he wins. Also, second thing, if someone wants a cheaper option, because not everyone can afford a $1,000 PSA 10, I would buy a ton of his first Clippers jersey cards. They're very cheap. I believe Optic. I know Optic. I think Select also in his Clippers jersey. And I also know Mosaic has him in the Clippers jersey too. I think those cards will see a climb too if he wins in LA this year or even next year. I think that they would see a climb. And I do think even if he doesn't win this year, very good chance he wins in the next 3 years, tag team with Paul George, and the fact that the owner is willing to do anything to win a championship before the Lakers. He'll go over the salary cap. That Ballmer has unlimited money. Former executive of Microsoft. So yeah, I think Kawhi's a very good buy.
All right, now let's take the other side of that coin, which you kind of alluded to in that answer. What are your thoughts on LeBron as a player to collect?
I think he's definitely all-time great. He's one of the best. I mean, he's definitely probably the best player I've ever seen other than Michael Jordan. I just feel like he's 35 years old. If he doesn't win this year, I think there's a lot of teams that are coming up, like that Bucks team that will even if they don't win this year, if they do make a deep run, they'll feel that much more equipped to win the next year. You have the Nets who are going to be coming back with Durant and Kyrie. I read a rumor that they might even be getting Beal. I just feel like it's going to get this is a great chance for the Lakers to win a championship and LeBron to add to his resume. But if he doesn't, it just feels, and Kawhi wins, now they both have the same amount of championships. And then I feel like the whole conversation of LeBron versus MJ will be forced to die down, because Kobe's got 5, Shaq's got 4, Kawhi's got the same amount. I feel like it's going to be the whole LeBron overpassing MJ. I just think that will die down. And I think a lot of his rise in price is due to the fact that you have so many people saying that he may be the greatest player of all time, and for sure the number 2 of all time, which I just don't think it's just not set in stone. I feel like that's very subjective. No one can really say to me objectively that LeBron is the second best player of all time, because, I get it. He does have an amazing skill set, but winning does matter a lot. There's guys with much better skill sets than certain players in the NBA, but I would still rather have that other guy because he just has it, That's kind of hard to explain, but that's how I feel about it. I think long-term his prices will be fine, because he did basically capture the NBA for such a long period of time. But I'm personally not. I'm buying some cards of LeBron, but nothing crazy high-end. I'm buying a lot of the first Lakers jersey cards. I feel like those are good cheap buys that have a good amount of upside. And for people that want to buy them, let's say to flip quickly, they probably will make it at least to the Western Conference Finals, in which you could sell, probably make a good profit. But yeah, that's my take on LeBron.
Very interesting. Okay, now let's shift from 2 of the NBA's most elite active players to some of the up-and-coming guys. And the first one I want to ask you about, of course, I'm going to put him first, is Luka. What are your thoughts on collecting Luka and the Luka sports card market?
I really like Luka. The guy already has so much accolades before even getting to the NBA. EuroLeague MVP at 19 years old, I don't think people really understand. The EuroLeague is tough. They have really, really good teams over there in the EuroLeague, and he won MVP at 19 years old. He's 4 years younger than the next youngest ever to do that, which was Milos Teodosic, who can't even really hang in the NBA. And Luka won MVP at 19 years old. And then he comes into the NBA, wins Rookie of the Year right out the gate. And then in his second year, he's already in the MVP race. Today there was a poll on ESPN. He was 4th in the MVP race with the likes of Harden, Kawhi, Giannis, LeBron, Davis. You have all these guys who are at their prime, very near their prime, and he's already kind of in that, amongst those names. When you really look at it, there's just not many guys who are in the MVP race this early in their career that do not end up being all time. I can't really think of too many. I mean, I think Derrick Rose would be maybe one, but that was just a freak injury. For the most part, when guys are that good, that young, they just get better. He's not going to get worse. So if he's averaging X now, he's going to be averaging that, add 10% each year that goes by. And his game is just already so refined, but it will get better, So I really like him. He's a natural born leader. You just don't see him really get frazzled that easily. He always makes the right play. He always wants the ball in crunch time. A lot of guys, sometimes when the lights get too bright, they kind of are a little bit passive. I hate to say it. I've seen that from LeBron in his career sometimes, where he doesn't want that blame on him sometimes. I know all the LeBron truthers are mad at me right now, but that's the truth. If you've seen him, there's been a lot of situations where he passes the ball in situations. He has no business passing the ball. A guy like Luka, I don't really think you'll see that quite as much. I really like his game. You can tell the teammates really love him. He's just like a really good leader. They follow him, they trust him, and I think he's a good buy. I think that he's going to go down as one of the better players ever, so long as he doesn't get hurt. I just don't see how a guy that good at 21 won't go straight into the Hall of Fame outside of injuries. And he's on the great organization. I talked about that already in this interview. That organization is great with Mark Cuban owning it, and Carlisle's just a really good coach. And they have some good pieces too with Porzingis and Hardaway, and they'll bring more, and players will want to come play with him because he makes everyone around him so much better. Guys like Dwight Powell, these guys on other teams, they wouldn't really be doing anything, and Luka just makes everyone so much better. Very similar to LeBron in that regard.
Nice. I don't disagree with any of that, but I'm a bit biased. Now, we were talking a little bit about Kawhi. His base Prism PSA 10 from 2012, like you pointed out, is selling for about $1,000 right now. That's roughly the current market value. His silver PSA 10 recorded a sale last night. Last night was May 31st. Kawhi's silver PSA 10 from 2012, his rookie card, did just shy of $17,000. Now, comparing that to Luka is not apples to apples because, Luka has a much higher population on all those cards. But looking at the Luka landscape, his silver Prism PSA 10 is about $2,500 to $2,600 at the time of recording this. And his base PSA 10 from Prism is about $600. What type of upside potentially do you see in those cards at those prices, in the context of some of the other prices we're seeing for some of these other guys? I mean, supposing he does, go on to have the career that it looks like he's on the trajectory to have, is there still a lot of room for growth there? Is there a little bit of room for growth there? What do you think about that?
Man, that's a tough question. It's a tough question. I would have to think about that one more because the population is just so high. But at the same time, if he keeps playing at this rate, he's going to win an MVP. He's going to make deep runs in the playoffs. And whenever we've seen it over and over, every time this happened, prices just always go up. So whatever they're at, the guy keeps getting better. The prices just keep going higher and higher and higher. But yeah, his prices have just been such a meteoric rise. Sometimes it makes you wonder, like, God, could they really just keep just going up? Like, could a PSA 10 base that sells for $600 really get to thousands of dollars? Even with the guy being as good as he is, yeah, that's a tough question. Like, I definitely, I don't have that answer. I wouldn't really know. I would say buying his more rare stuff, obviously, and buying the color stuff, that stuff will probably definitely go up, because that's just rare and that scarcity is a big thing. But at the same time, everybody wants, everybody who jumps into this hobby is going to want his Prism rookie and his Prism silver rookie. So it could keep going up. I'm not entirely sure on that one. I do think he has a very built-in market. I think there's a lot of guys who, once his price is a certain point, they'll buy as many as humanly possible, and they will not let it go below that certain price. With the upside potential, I think that's harder for me to call. I have to think about that more. And honestly, I just need to be around the card game more because I've been paying attention to it a lot over the last 9 months. But there's still a lot that I have to learn, and that would probably be one of them.
Well, no, I mean, that was a very thoughtful, careful, and properly parsed answer to what's probably the second most interesting and kind of speculative question in the hobby right now. Is kind of like, what does the future hold for Luka if he continues on the trajectory he's on in terms of his card market? So like, I couldn't have said it any better than you. I don't have the answer to that question either, but
Yeah.
it's definitely like an interesting one to kind of take some approaches on and think about. But I think the first most interesting question and the most difficult question in the hobby right now centers around the next guy that I want to talk about. And this is the guy that like all eyes in the hobby are watching right now, not just his play, but also his market. And that's Zion. And so what do you think about Zion, the player, and all the things we've seen from him so far to date?
Okay, before I get on Zion, there's one thing I was thinking about as you were asking this question on the Luka. One answer I do have to that one question was I do have 3 PSA 10s of Luka Prism base, and I'm not selling them. I have like no interest in selling them, and I don't want to sell them. So maybe that speaks to the upside. I do think it could get higher because, yeah, I'm not worried about it at all. So I do think they probably could go over 1,000. Okay, but with Zion, so yeah, I think Zion's like going to be really, really, really good. I know there's a lot of people that have a lot of fears with him, but I really don't think they really realized like what he's doing. I don't know if it's because he kind of came into the NBA mid-year or whatnot, but the guy's averaging 29.5 points per 36 minutes through his first 13 games. That ranks the highest of any rookie in NBA history, even ahead of Wilt Chamberlain, who used to play against guys that like had side jobs. So Zion's already like the highest scoring, basically one of the best scoring rookie of all time. So, and he's doing this off injury, and what a lot of people say is out of shape. So these two things that people kind of knock him for, it actually is an argument for him, not against him, because God forbid that he didn't get injured and that he was in shape, because he's already one of the best rookies of all time. Just as in his third preseason game, he played against Utah Jazz and Gobert. He goes 9 for 12 and scores 26 points against the Jazz. I get it's preseason. A lot of people are going to say preseason, nobody cares. But if you watch that game, Gobert wasn't trying to let him score. He got this 19-year-old kid with all the hype. It's third game into preseason. He couldn't stop him. There was nothing he can do. Also, the game prior, Zion against the Bulls in that preseason scored 29 points on 12 of 13 shooting. A lot of people said, oh, yeah, he's really good in college. Once again, to the NBA, a different story, and he goes 12 for 13 in his second preseason game. Those numbers are just not – like nobody goes 12 for 13 like ever, preseason or not. And then his first game, real game, regular season game, after missing half the year, he plays 18 minutes and scores 22 points on 11 shots. 22 points on 11 shots. He basically didn't miss. He actually didn't miss from three-point range. He went 4 for 4. To put that into perspective, Ben Simmons has made 4 threes in his entire career. Zion, who a lot of people say, oh, his biggest problem is going to be his shot, came out the gate 4 from three-point range. I know he didn't keep that up, but it just goes to show you the guy's a gamer. The lights were super bright that night. Everybody who's into the NBA was watching that game, and the guy just completely showed up. Against the Lakers, one of the best foreign-court defenses I've ever seen. They got LeBron, they got Anthony Davis, they got JaVale McGee, they got Dwight Howard. He scores 29 points in 33 minutes, then follows that up 5 days later against the Lakers, which a lot of times when a team plays a guy twice like that and they're a smart team with good coaches, good players, the second time around the player will have a much tougher time. He actually did better, scores 35 points on 12 of 16 shooting. 16 shots, 35 points. That's just unheard of to do against any team, let alone the Lakers as a 19-year-old who's supposedly out of shape coming off of a really bad injury. Something else with him I just noticed, he's just not afraid of like playing against like these superior players. A lot of times you see guys, especially against LeBron, you see it the most, where these players will come out, they're all giddy-eyed, they're all excited to go meet LeBron and get to like high-five him before the game or whatever. And with Zion, you just don't see that. He basically doesn't even look at him. He kind of just bumps him, and it's like he's the same with Pope as LeBron. He's just not fazed by it at all, and I think that's big. You can just tell the guy's just he plays that way. He plays with just a crazy amount of intensity, and you can tell that he's just not afraid of anything. And I just really like that about him. I think that's a big reason why he hit those 4 threes. He just shot them confidently. Once he saw one go down, The next three, he took them real confidently, and he made all of them. And I just love the fact he's got a huge following, 5 million followers already on Instagram. That is a big deal nowadays, especially as more people come into the hobby. A lot of these people have followed him from the beginning, from like when he was 16 years old, very similar to LeBron as well. But like all the YouTube highlights, all the Instagram highlights. So people, I feel like, have that connection with him from early on, and they'll basically be fans of him for his entire career. So I like that team. I like Brandon Ingram. I like some of the pieces they have there, and they also have movable pieces to make a trade in the future for maybe a more veteran superstar. I really, really like Zion going forward. I think also a big thing with Zion, his minutes have been limited all year long. So it's not like a matter of if. He's going to average 30 points per game next year. You can write that down. You can quote me on that. Zion will average 30 points per game next year. So long as he's getting 35 minutes and there's not some sort of injury thing where they're still limiting him, he's going to average 30 points. And a 20-year-old averaging 30 points is completely unheard of. Very few players in the history of the NBA have averaged 30 points at the age of 20 years old. And I'll talk a little bit more about that because I do have a list of the guys who have done that on a separate subject that we're going to talk about at some point, I think.
Very, very interesting. I'm high on Zion as well. I think if you just watch him play a full game, you can see the raw athletic talent that he has. You can see that he is an absolute dominant force whenever he wants to be one. And you can see that he has the ability to score the ball at will. He's one of those guys that just like he just has like a magnet to the ball. He just knows to get to the ball. He knows how it's coming off the rim. You know, he just has intangibles that make him a very, very scary player to play against. That's I'm saying that as a Mavericks supporter and a Luka Doncic fan, that, you know, that's going to be a rivalry, I think, that will define the Western Conference for many years to come.
Yeah, I agree.
So I really like that take. Now, here's a question for you. Given all of that, is Zion's card market, is it properly valuing his cards? Are his cards overvalued right now? Are they undervalued right now? His Prism PSA 10 has been declining in the last month or so. It's at about $500 right now. Is there a buying window going on right now with Zion? You know, I mean, is he too high? Is he too low? Is he just right? How is his card market looking right now to you?
I think that it probably is a little slightly undervalued. Especially with there's rumors now that the NBA might even let the Pelicans into the playoffs, that they might structure the playoffs in a way that a team like the Pelicans, who's going to be on the outside looking in, might now have a chance. If that happens and his limit, and he gets a no minutes limit in the playoffs, the team may not advance past the first round, but he's going to put up absolutely scary numbers in the playoffs. If he gets 35 minutes, he's going to put up crazy numbers. So I don't know. I could definitely see a bump in his prices, especially if he makes the playoffs. I definitely think that next year he's going to have a monster year with the fact that minute limit being lifted next year. His prices will go up as because his stats are going to go up dramatically, I think. And just being with the team from the beginning of the year, I think they'll have a much better chance to make a really solid run at the playoffs and maybe even have a good seeding. I definitely think his prices will trend upwards next year. I just think people love him. I think that like he's a very likable kid. He's got that big following from Duke. I think his prices are going up. You know, I also could see like people saying these prices are crazy, but his play is just going to dictate higher prices, in my opinion.
Indeed. Let's switch gears for a second before we get back to a final set of questions on the sports card market. I want to ask you now, because we've been talking about interesting plays that can be made on different players and who you're optimistic on and kind of how you see the season unfolding in the context of cards. Now, but what about in the context of as a professional sports bettor? What are some of, over the course of your career, what are some of the best and worst bets that you've made? What's some of the crazy stuff that you've done after doing all your analysis, and people said, man, you must be crazy, and you did it? What are some of those really like legendary and then those crazy bets that you made?
Got you. So one crazy one. So some of the bets I make actually are not on the games. It's actually prop bets. Specifically in the Super Bowl, they offer a ton of proposition wagers. So you can wager on all kinds of things like how long the national anthem's going to go, and even more crazy, like what color T-shirt is the person singing the halftime show going to be wearing. And there was one particular wager one year that stood out to me that a couple of websites offered, which was, what will the person announcing the coin toss guess that the coin is going to land? So not what will the coin land, heads or tails. This player, the wager was, what will he guess the coin is going to land? So this was kind of like lumped in with the coin toss wager of just, will it land heads or tails? And I thought to myself, there's a very good chance that this is actually not up to chance what this person's going to guess. So I started doing some research. It was, you guys can look it up. It's the Patriots versus the Falcons Super Bowl. The Patriots were going to be the ones choosing the coin toss. So I did a Twitter search and I typed in Patriots win toss and also Patriots win coin toss. And I basically found every single tweet from a beat writer for the last 4 years prior to that. And I marked down what the Patriots have guessed at the coin toss. So like, for instance, a result will come up. Patriots announce heads, win toss, choose to defer. Patriots almost 99% of the time defer, which is also why every team defers, by the way, but that's a football talk. But so I ended up coming up with this data, and the Patriots had never called tails in the previous 4 years, not one single time. I did a little more research, and I found out that their special teams captain, Matthew Slater, always announces the coin toss. So it's not like 1 week Brady did it, and then 1 week Gronk would do it, and then 1 week Slater would do it. The special teams captain on the Patriots always calls the coin toss. Then I found out that Matthew Slater's father used to be in the NFL, was also a special teams captain, would also announce the coin toss, and he always said heads. So this was very much what I would call, I hate to use this word because it's very rare in sports betting, but it was a lock. Unless something happened to Matthew Slater, which even if something, God forbid, did, they probably were still going to call heads. It was just a stone lock. And a lot of my websites, like I said, they had it lumped in with what will they announce a coin toss is going to be. So they basically would take very large wagers on this wager. And I ended up wagering, let's just say mid 5 figures on it. And I did win that one, and that was a good one. I was a little worried, even though I was doing it with super reputable places. I was a little worried that once they realized why I wagered so much, that they might say, "Hey, look, But no, they kind of just took it, and I was able to win that. And the odds changed drastically too. After I wagered, they realized their mistake. So I was wagering on this at 1-to-1 odds. I think it closed at basically. I wagered 1-to-1 odds. It closed out in a situation where if you wanted to wager on heads, that you would have had to wager like $2,000 to win like $100. So they realized their mistake, the odds, but I was able to get my wager in. Another good one that I did was in NASCAR. They offered, it was a truck series race, and they offered which driver was going to win the race. And there was this one young kid, Chase Briscoe is his name, and they offered him at 36-to-1. And I watched the qualifying. The kid was super fast in qualifying, and he had just shown a lot of promise in the coming weeks before that. And I wagered $2,000 at 36-to-1, and I won that one. And that one paid out, about $70,000 was the win on that. That was, I think that was slightly bigger than the Super Bowl win. So that was my biggest win. My worst, probably the worst wager I've done, which it's crazy because I may actually not lose this. I did wager a ton on the Hawks season win total over this year. I was convinced that they were going to have a mediocre season, which is all they needed to have in order for me to win that wager. And, as things played out, John Collins got a suspension, and Trae Young, I think, got hurt. Kevin Werder got hurt. And the team started played bad for the first for a lot of the season, and I was 100% going to lose. It looks like I may not. I may not lose though, because the rule is if they don't play 82 games, they actually have to refund my wager. So I may end up getting that back. I'm trying to think of like a really big loss, because that one is kind of lame because I didn't really even lose. There was one weekend in college football that it was just a series of wagers that I basically just went like 0-10. And I got worked up pretty good for like, I think it was 40,000 that weekend. It was a sleepless night, but yeah, that was a bad one. Those are that one's probably the one that comes to mind that I lost. That was the biggest and worst.
Okay, so we're talking about some very sizable wagers here. Are you going to be, or are you currently making wagers of that size when you're looking at picking up certain different sports cards?
So no, even though I do have the means to pick up big sports cards, I'm not, and I do, like, let's say I wager on sports for a living. A lot of people think I'm like a gambler, so of course a guy like that is gonna like just go crazy and buy all these crazy big cards. But I'm very much I'm gonna walk before I run, and I still understand that I don't know a lot, and I'm not gonna fool myself. Even though I do know a lot about sports, you can know a lot about sports, but that doesn't mean that you know everything there is to know about cards. So there's a lot of cards I wanted to pull the trigger on that are very big that I tell myself, hold on, take it slow, wait it out, just gain more knowledge, listen to more podcasts, read more on the forums, just kind of go through the ebbs and flows of it first. I've progressively started to buy higher end cards, but I'm still kind of like not just unloading and buying, crazy amount of RPAs or, high-end old exquisite or anything like that. I really like to educate myself first and feel like very, very confident in my buys. And currently at this moment, it's more like in the, buying $500 to $1,000 cards and not yet quite on the super high end. But, I'm trying my best to get there. I also want to kind of like turn a little bit of a profit on certain cards and then use some of that money in order to fund bigger purchases so that it doesn't feel like I'm coming out of pocket. That way, if it does the card ends up going down in value or whatever, I won't feel as bad necessarily. But no, I haven't really made any too crazy sizable purchase. I think the biggest one is still the Jordan PSA 8 that I paid $2,300 for at the National.
Okay, well that's nothing to take lightly. Those are big purchases. Yeah. But I really respect that approach. It's thoughtful, it's cautious. I think it's admirable. Have you found? I think like we all kind of at some point we find like our grail card, that just one card it's elusive. It can feel out of reach at times. It feels risky. It's expensive. But there's just something inside you where you just feel like, man, I have to have that card, and one day I will have it. Like for me, it was Michael Jordan's PMG Red. That was my holy grail card that I knew one day I would just have to get it. And I'm wondering, have you found yours yet? Do you have a holy grail card yet? And maybe you don't want to say what it is and alert people to it, and maybe that'll make the interest to go up in it more. But have you found that card yet?
I think it's a Jordan Fleer PSA 10, to be honest. That to me is like, in terms of basketball, I think I know there's bigger cards, there's logo mins and stuff like that, and I respect those, and I think those are amazing, But I think that the Jordan Fleer PSA 10 would be it for me. I just think it's the most iconic basketball card of all time, and I don't think there actually. Can't say no, you can never know, but I strongly feel that there will never be a more iconic card than that Jordan 86 Fleer, and obviously the PSA 10 being the best version of it.
Yeah, no, that's a perfectly suitable grail, and it's just tough because that card has even as the Last Dance hype has cooled off, and we've seen more than an ordinary amount of copies come to market, and the price on that card has cooled off a bit from where it was flirting with $100,000. Still, it's sitting at 70,000, and that's double what it could have been had for just a few months ago. So, the thing about the Grail chase is that it's oftentimes a path that's just like littered with regrets. Like I have lots of regrets on Grails that I wanted to pick up that I just didn't, and now they're literally like financially out of my reach. But I'm optimistic that the Jordan Flair PSA 10 maybe can still come down a little bit more. That card is so iconic, but at the same time, there's a lot of people who got it for really cheap early on, and they're comfortable letting it go on like a 5 or 6x return.
Right.
So maybe an opportunity will open up for people who are chasing that card to be able to get that Grail at a somewhat reasonable price here in the future. But okay.
One more. There's one more that came into our mind that's a little bit more unique, I guess, and different that I really love that I don't think gets as much attention as it should, and it's the Michael Jordan Exquisite Rookie Flashbacks. So it's got the 0304 design. It's got Jordan on the picture as like young Jordan as a rookie, and then a lot of them have crazy patches. And his auto is really big and bold on all of them. And I love that 0304 exquisite design. So you kind of like mix like the best card of LeBron with like Michael Jordan. And I really, really like that card. That's a card that I definitely want to own one day. And I think has a lot of upside. I really don't see it that much. I feel like it doesn't really pop up like on Instagram or just for sale. I feel like that card is maybe underrated and a card that I definitely want to own one day.
No, you don't see that card pop up very much. That's from one of the great years of Exquisite, the last year of Exquisite, 2009, and there's only 23 copies of it. So that's definitely a worthy Grail as well. Let's shift to two final topics. These are surely to be the most polarizing. So I just humbly ask that the audience bear in mind that, we're offering opinions here, and everybody's welcome to disagree or to agree with those opinions. But, keep in mind that this is just offering points of view, and that's all, and with reasons and justification behind it. So the first question I have for you is, who in the card market right now, which player is currently overvalued? Who is priced too high right now, in your opinion?
I think there's two guys. I think Ben Simmons is really overpriced. I think that his market came out super strong, and he did have a good start to his career when he started playing. But to put it simply, I don't think he has it. Like, he seems scared out there. The coach tells him, he implores him to shoot the ball, and the guy refuses to shoot the ball. Even with a 20-point lead, 25-point lead, you'll see him wide open, he won't shoot. And that's just like a mental thing that I think is going to be really hard for him to overcome. He obviously doesn't really have a good shot to begin with, but the fact that mentally he seems so scared, I really just don't like that about him. And I feel like he's a guy that won't ever really shoot the ball well. And for that reason, I feel that his game and his upside is just super limited. He's an easy guy to defend, especially come playoff time, when the paint is so much more packed. All his points come at the rim, all of them, mostly dunks, and he's always going to play second fiddle to Embiid, who's a superior scorer on that team. Yet his prices are just so high still. I think they've definitely started to come down, but I still think those are really high. And maybe a more for shock value, but I actually do believe, I think Giannis's prices are a little bit too high. I just really highly doubt that he wins a title in his first deep run. Like, no one ever wins a title in their first real go at it. The third best player on the team is just really not that great. Also, Giannis's skill set is still limited. You can't really go to him at the end of the game. You don't really trust him to make that shot, to create that opportunity for another player the way you do some of these other superstars. They'll probably have to go to Chris Middleton in a lot of situations, game after game in the playoffs. Do you really trust Chris Middleton game after game in the playoffs to just continually hit these big shots at the end of the game? And I just think that Giannis's prices could see a drastic drop if they take an early exit. And it wouldn't shock me to see the Bucks get knocked out by someone that they shouldn't get knocked out by, like a Miami Heat team or somebody else in the East. I think his prices are high, and there's a lot of risk involved with his cards right now at the prices that they're at. So those would be my two overvalued guys right now.
All right. And the flip side of the coin, who is currently undervalued right now?
So I also have two guys, but the main guy I think is the most undervalued is Brandon Ingram. So a little history in the last 34 years, there's only been about, I think it's 11 guys who have ever averaged 24 points per game at 22 years or younger. The list is Michael Jordan, Shaquille O'Neal, Kobe Bryant, LeBron James, Carmelo Anthony, Kevin Durant, Derrick Rose, Anthony Davis, Karl Anthony Towns, and Devin Booker. Brandon Ingram's prices compared to all those guys is just, it's not even close. It's just way, way less. The guy can score in a variety of ways. He's got a 7'3" wingspan. He gets a comparison. I think it's correct. He reminds me a lot of Kevin Durant. He's seen a huge rise in his game ever since getting to New Orleans. He's shooting 38.7% from three this year, and he's shooting more threes. Typically, more volume of shots means your percentage is going to go down lower because you're being less selective. His percentage has actually shot up drastically. A lot of times people say, oh, it's a lucky shooting season. Sometimes that's true, but when his free throw percentage also goes up from 67 to 86, it's probably not a lucky year. It's very rare a guy shoots 86%, and that it's just lucky from the free throw line. He can handle the ball. He can run the floor. He's an amazing slasher. He can create off the dribble. Can be counted on to hit game winners because he has that ability to get the separation. He's got that, he's very tall. The length is there to get his shot over anyone. And his post game has gotten a lot better, and he's a very underrated passer. And again, that list of players that he's amongst at 22 years or younger, that's literally it in the last 34 years. All of those guys are, other than Towns and Booker, I would say all those guys are like surefire Hall of Fames. Maybe not Rose either because he got hurt, but everybody else is definitely surefire Hall of Fame. And Ingram's putting up numbers, that put him in that list, and I don't think that his prices reflect that whatsoever. I think that people just don't like him because he got traded, and that his rise to be as good as he is took a little bit longer than these people would have wanted. Because he came into the league so young too. Because he's already his rookie class was 2016, yet he's only 22 years old now in 2020. So I think his prices are a little bit low, and I also think Trae Young, he averages 29.6 points per game at 21 years old. There's only, I think, one guy. Actually, no, yeah. There's only one guy who's ever averaged more points at 21 years old in the last 34 years, and it's not Michael Jordan. It's Kevin Durant. It's the only guy. He averaged 30.1 points per game at 21 years old. Trae's above all these other guys that we just talked about. He averaged more than Shaq, Kobe, Allen Iverson. He averaged more than all those guys. Actually, no, LeBron also. So LeBron averaged the most at 21, then Durant, then Trae Young. Steph Curry didn't average what Trae Young averaged. I think it's his fifth year in the league. He was averaging in the 20s, even 18 early on, and then he made the meteoric rise come fifth year. Trae Young is objectively much better than Steph Curry was in his second year. Again, I think that he's undervalued because the team just doesn't have any talent. His second best player is John Collins, who missed a lot of the season. And the third best player is DeAndre Hunter, who's a rookie, who's not very good. I don't think there's a team with a worse third player than Hunter. So I just think that his prices are low considering what he's doing on that team. The guy's, phenomenal shooter, shoots from far. He's very flashy, throws the ball between people's legs. He's got a game that, it's very exciting to watch. And he averages 9.3 assists too, despite being that team that is really bad. If he had just even mediocre players around him, he'd be averaging, probably 10, 11, 12 assists a game. 21 years old. He's got a lot of room to go. If he's averaging 29 at this age, sure enough, at 24, 25, he's going to be averaging well over 30 as well. So I think his prices are pretty low right now. I think like $200 on a PSA 10 Prism is, to me, just, it doesn't make sense. I think that he's got a lot of upside and very, very little downside. 30 points per game in a pretty good market in Atlanta. I really like his cards in the foreseeable future.
That's a really interesting take. I did a little analysis a few days ago where I took Trey's Prism Silver PSA 10 value, which was about $682, and I just divided it by how many wins his team had.
Right.
Yeah. And so I came up with like a price per team win metric, which is about $34.10 for the silver. Yep. And so, what that one thing that tells me is that, like, relative to like Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, relative to Michael Porter Jr., Trey's price per team win is a lot higher, which tells me two things. Number one, it tells me that he's just a popular player that has become the face of a franchise and that people really like rallying around. Right. And, number two, it tells me that people are measuring his contribution to his team as being very important to how that team performs. So the thing is, Trey's team's record this year is 20-47 at the current moment as league play is suspended. And like I said, his price per team win is $34. Now, if we hold that price per team win constant at $34 and his team turns around and wins 40 wins next year rather than 20, because I agree with something that you said, like you said earlier in this discussion, that winning is very important to basketball cards, and it is. And so if his team can double their wins up to $40 and we hold his price per team win constant at $34, the price of his silver PSA 10 Prism would go from about $682, just double that number, just shy of $1,400. So I'm making some assumptions there that maybe we hold the price per team win constant, maybe we don't. But one thing for sure is that people definitely are very, very much attributing value to Trey already, and that's without much team success. If he can go ahead and translate that into team success, if the Hawks can put a couple of pieces together and upgrade those number 3 and those number 4 slots, like you were mentioning, I think his market would be due for a pretty substantial increase. That's just a speculation on my behalf. Yeah. I don't collect Trey, but I kind of see a similar market inefficiency that you might be seeing there. And then, to put a bow on the comparison, Luka's Prism Silver PSA 10 at the time I did this analysis was selling for $2,650 for the Silver Prism PSA 10. His team has 40 wins this year and 27 losses. So his price per team win is $66.25. So Luka, his price per team win is twice that of Trey. So if Trey's team starts winning, you might also see his price per team win start to go up too. And now you're talking about a compounding effect. So very, very interesting analysis there on Trey.
Something people can look at too, before the next season starts, look at season win totals. All the sports books offer season win totals. And maybe use the price per team win multiplied by what their projected season win total is, because Las Vegas does a pretty good job of coming up with projected season win totals. And you can use that maybe as a barometer to decide if you want to invest in a young player in a team, if you think the team is going to win more games, and you see that and you notice that to be the case with the season win total.
Indeed. Okay, man, this has been a really interesting discussion. Is there anything else that you want to offer up? Any other pearls of wisdom or insights or just commentary on the league and what we can expect to see over the next few months, or just any final thoughts before we go ahead and wrap up this talk?
I don't know. I think I've gone over a lot. Again, I think everybody harps on it. Just collect what you like, buy the guys you like. Try for the most part to spend money that, you can afford to be without. No one knows where the card's going to go. No one knows if a player's going to get injured or not. I wouldn't, I know there's a lot of people saying invest, which I do see the investment opportunity, but at the same time, you still always, in anything you do, you have to have, bankroll management, and you can't overextend into the sports card market because it is booming. And I know that it's very, conducive for people to want to just throw it in there because all these card values, all these players are going up. But just, take it easy, have fun with it. If you feel pressure when you're buying that card thinking that you might be paying too much, can't afford it, you probably can't afford it. They say sometimes, if you can't buy something twice without flinching, then you probably shouldn't buy it. Maybe use that concept into it. Of course, if it's a grail that you need to have, it's a one of one, you'll never be able to get it again. That's a different story, but I don't know. That would be my advice to people.
Well said. Well said. I agree with everything you just said there. Well, guys, Anthony, I want to thank you on behalf of the audience and on behalf of the House of Jordans podcast and the team for coming on, for kicking off this Conversations with Chris series. I think this has been a very interesting discussion. And you guys can find Anthony on Instagram at Summertime Cards. A lot of great content. I love the pictures you take of your cards. You take some of them from that high-rise 79th floor perspective in Miami. You take some really beautiful shots of your cards. And so it's a really fun and good follow. So thank you, man, for being on the show. And thank you, everybody, for tuning in. This has been episode 1 of Conversations with Chris. We'll be back with more for you soon.